Welcome back to the Military Times Reporters Roundtable, where we bring you the inside stories behind the week's biggest headlines. I'm Leo Shane, Capitol Hill Bureau Chief for Military Times, and with me in studio again are our Pentagon Bureau Chief, Megan Myers, and our Senior Managing Editor, Howard Altman. Thank you both for coming back.
Thanks for having us.
We covered the biggest stories of 2021 in our last episode. Now it's time to start looking ahead at what's in store for 2022. I asked each of you to bring a topic you think we're going to be covering a lot. Howard, you brought in Ukraine, Russia, the tensions that are over there right now. Talk to us about where things stand.
The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense recently told me that there's about 120,000 Russian troops aligned around the Ukraine border. Previously, their head of their Defense Intelligence Agency told me that the Russians are preparing an invasion by the end of January, beginning of February. It's really unknown yet what Vladimir Putin's going to do. The U.S. has said that there's not going to be U.S. troops involved should Ukraine invade. The Biden administration said that's not going to happen. And still unknown what Vladimir Putin's going to do.
They keep promising these severe consequences, but saying that U.S. troops are off the table. So.
I mean, they're talking about economic sanctions on bank accounts, that kind of thing, additional arms to Ukraine.
But Megan, if we're not sending troops there, does this mean this is nothing for the Pentagon to worry about?
I mean, that doesn't mean that some sort of outside contingency won't happen. But yeah, like Howard mentioned, like you mentioned, there are troops in the area. We have sent weapons to Ukraine. The Defense Department feels pretty good about its posture there. But we really don't know, except that the administration has made it very clear that they're not really stepping a toe into that, really. They want the diplomatic process to play out.
Well, Megan, something you've already been covering and something that I know we're going to be covering more is this issue of the ongoing pandemic and the mandatory vaccinations for troops. Tell us where we are at this point with this. Where do things stand, and are we starting to see folks who are being kicked out?
We are. Actually, 27 airmen are about to be kicked out of the Air Force, the first kind of wave of service members who are being voluntarily separated for refusing to get vaccinated. There are about 40,000-ish troops who still aren't vaccinated, but that's also in the context of the National Guard and the Army Reserve, the Army National Guard, and the Army Reserve are about 500,000 people, and they have until the end of June to get fully vaccinated. But everybody else in the services has missed their deadline basically at this point if they're still not, if they don't have a waiver or something like that. So each of the services has their own process playing out for how they're going to identify people and then eventually kick them out.
40,000 sounds like a lot of folks, and I know we focus on that, but that's a very small portion of the military.
There are 2.3 million people in the military, and most of the services, especially in the active duty components, upwards of 95%, 97% of their troops are vaccinated, and then they will have several thousand more waivers to go through before that number is complete.
But that small group still gets a lot of attention. Howard, I know on Capitol Hill they just recently passed language in the Defense Authorization Act that would make sure that folks get honorable discharges, or at least not dishonorable discharges if they refuse to take the vaccines. I mean, is this just this seems pretty straightforward? We know the science behind the vaccines. We know the mandate from Defense Department. Do you think we're going to see large numbers of people being forced out of the military for refusing this?
Well, as Megan said, there's a small percentage, but still there are numbers of people, and you will continue to see people oppose. Recently, the executive officer of the destroyer Churchill was fired for refusing to take the vaccine. There are lawsuits against the Pentagon trying to get out of the vaccine. There are National Guard units that have raised issues about that. So you will continue to see a level of protest against the mandate.
Megan, has the Pentagon grabbed onto that? Do they feel like we're, as in the media, elevating these folks who are refusing the vaccine to a level that makes it seem like it's a crisis when maybe it's just an annoyance?
Absolutely. And this comes out of Congress too, but the insinuation that losing 10,000, 20,000 troops is really going to destroy readiness throughout the military, that's not really likely. The other thing is that the Pentagon is really taking this stance of of being the good cop and trying to show why you should do this and why it's good, instead of saying you'll get kicked out. But that's not what they're leading with, because they want people to do the right thing and they don't want contrarians to dig in. So they're trying to make it as smooth as this is a lawful order and this is and you will follow it, and if you don't, there will be consequences. They're trying not to push too hard because they don't want that huge backlash of people saying, well, you're making me do something I don't want to do, and so we're all leaving.
Well, you mentioned Congress. Let's shift to Capitol Hill, where I live, and the midterm elections that are looming this fall. It doesn't look like military issues are going to be a major factor in the elections, but one thing that is going to be significant is the Pentagon watching what happens with the defense budget. As of right now, Congress still hasn't finalized the fiscal 22 defense budget, even though the current fiscal year started all the way back in October. Lawmakers avoided a government shutdown in recent weeks, but they won't reach a full year budget deal to the end of February. That's around the same time the White House is supposed to come out with their 2023 deal. This is yet another budget mess up on Capitol Hill, and something that's really frustrating. And there's a lot of questions about what the defense budget should be this year, next year, post-Afghanistan. This is going to be a big issue.
So Leo, what is the danger for the military as this budget process is delayed and the two budget processes are actually bumping up against each other?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen so far is that there's a lot of uncertainty of what they even should be asking for next year, because they don't know what they're spending right now. And this issue of, you know, the defense budget is huge. There's still a lot of money, but they can't start new programs. They can't expand programs. They can't buy certain new equipment without the new money coming in. They're still working on fiscal 2021 levels. So until that's sorted out, there's a question. We've seen in the last few weeks that defense leaders have been coming out and saying, hey, if you're going to extend the budget the whole year, if you do a continuing resolution for the whole year, that's going to cause huge problems. We already know it's starting to cause some problems with funding for the military pay raise. Military pay raise went into effect on January 1st, but about $250 million they've got to account for by moving around accounts. So that's interesting. Usually when we come here and we talk about election stuff, you know, it's getting out of Afghanistan or Iraq and everything. I'll be really interested to see if the defense budget becomes a big issue and at least a talking point on the campaign trail in the coming months.
I imagine it will be, because it'll be right on when people are starting a campaign.
Well, there's always 19 other things to yell and scream about on there too. So, look, one other thing before we go, another big story that I wanted to discuss with both of you this year. That's the long scheduled release of Top Gun 2, probably the most important cinematic event of the military community in years and years. The movie's debut has been delayed for more than a year because of the pandemic, but it looks like we're finally going to get to see it. Megan, you've covered the Navy for us. Give us an analysis. Do you think that this is going to be the realistic depiction that we need of the Navy, or is there another movie, say, I don't know, Aquaman 2, that really better reflects the Navy life?
You know, I think there may be a little bit of backlash, a little bit of, you know, Maverick's not necessarily the greatest role model, and at this
bite your tongue.
At this point in his career, you know, he would be retiring. He would be a 4-star admiral at this point. But the way that they've set up this movie is that he's kind of like a malingering captain who never made admiral, and it's his last chance before, you know, he times out. So we'll see how he does, but I don't want any other Navy officers to get the idea that you can just malinger at captain for years and years.
Howard, this movie's coming out in May, which gives you 5 months to see the original Top Gun, because you made the mistake of admitting you have not seen it, which I feel like is just a dereliction of duty as a military journalist here.
Hey, I'm feeling a need for speed.
That's the only line you know from the movie. That's all you've got.
The danger zone.
We'll get you working on that.
I'm in the danger zone.
That's all the time we've got for today. Thank you both for your insight. Howard, we're going to work on this. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in. You can follow all of our coverage on these issues in coming weeks at militarytimes.com. We'll see you next time.
The military and defense market is constantly evolving. Stay on top of the latest news with Sightline Media Group's live events. Continue to learn, understand new tools and technologies.
We're live. You're on in 3.
Defense, government, and industry leaders come together for successful and proven engaging events. You'll gain valuable insight, get the chance to ask questions, all from the comfort of your own home or office. Sign up for our events newsletters and receive alerts for upcoming live streams.